On Point is brought to you by National Baking Company.
Good evening and welcome to On Point. I'm your host, Kalila Reynolds.
And I'm Dennis Chung.
How are you doing, Dennis?
I'm good.
You good?
How are you?
No long bike ride this time?
No long ride, but the ride continues.
Well, the long for you is relative. But what we're talking about today is money. It's always on everybody's mind. Is your money really safe in the bank? Now, we used to have this concern, or identity theft, bank fraud used to be something that we only hear about on TV, but of late, it's been impacting Jamaicans right here at home quite a bit. The losses are in the millions of dollars, tens of millions. I've even heard hundreds of millions of dollars. We'll be joined by the Jamaica Bankers Association's Anti-Fraud Committee to tell us more.
And later in the show, we're going to talk about whether Jamaica's indigenous products are being neglected. Professor Errol Morrison says that businesses are not putting enough money into research and development. We'll hear more from him later.
But first, let's take a look back at some of the top business stories this week.
At number 5, the UK and EU are still at odds over citizens' rights and the amount the UK will pay to leave the bloc at the end of the second week of Brexit talks. EU negotiator Michael Barnier says the UK has not been clear enough about where it stands on these issues, and that's hampering progress. UK Brexit Secretary David Davis said the negotiations on the so-called divorce bill have been robust. He says progress had been made, but both sides need to show flexibility. At number 4, Jamaican truckers won a victory this week as the Kingston Freeport Container Terminal agreed to implement measures to make deliveries and pickups faster and easier. Truckers with the Port Trailer Haulage Association withdrew their services on Monday in protest. They also threatened to strike over the high turnaround time at the terminal. While on Thursday, the KFCT announced measures to improve the turnaround. These include longer opening hours and more staff. Number 3 is also a victory, this time for commuters on the north-south leg of Highway 2000. Following public outcry, the Minister of Transport has announced a reversal on the increase in toll rates on the highway. This follows an ease in the shortage of coins. Transport Minister Mike Henry issued a statement on Thursday, saying the rollback should be effective this weekend. At number 2, Grace Kennedy has shut down 7 of its Western Union locations, mostly in Western Jamaica, because of what it says is an unusually high number of fraudulent transactions. The company says the closures are temporary. They're expected to last a few days to a few weeks as Western Union reviews its systems. Senior Vice President of Operations at Grace Kennedy Money Services, Noel Greenland, says they've noticed an increase in those locations being used for scamming. GKMS holds the franchise for Western Union in the Caribbean. And your top business story this week is an issue of national security, literally. Cabinet has approved an extra $2.5 billion for the National Security Ministry to help implement the new Special Zones law. The funds are expected to provide new vehicles for the security forces as well as body cams, among other things. Many in the business community have expressed support for the new law, saying it will make it safer to do business.
And when we come back, how safe is your money in the bank? That and more right here on Point. Welcome back. Well, over the past 5 years, most of the focus has been on lotto scamming. But scammers have lately been targeting Jamaicans through credit card and ATM fraud. Here's more.
Scammers are turning their attention to banks, devising new ways to bilk unsuspecting customers out of millions of dollars. Using elaborate skimming operations which involve point-of-sale cashier and cleverly developed plans to compromise ATMs, the scammers are cashing in. The banking sector says scams have cost it millions of dollars in money lost to accounts compromised and the cost of conducting cyber investigations and beefing up cybersecurity. The fraud oftentimes goes beyond what can be readily detected, as scammers are in collaboration with tech hackers phishing for people's personal information. This level of attack has left customers worried and banks working overtime to reassure and regain confidence.
Well, joining us now to discuss is Chairperson of the Jamaica Bankers Association's Anti-Fraud Committee, Stacey Ann Esco. Welcome to On Point.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank
Welcome,
you.
Stacey. Stacey, let me start by asking, how prevalent is the issue of credit card scam, ATM, or even cybercrime with the banking sector?
I think over the years it has become more prevalent, and that is why we have deemed it very important that public education is the main solution to addressing this scourge that we are now facing.
Do you have any data to say 1 out of every however many Jamaicans are affected?
Unfortunately, we don't have that data at hand right now. One of the things that we are working at is to be collating that data. And we are working in collaboration with the JCF as well as other financial institutions across the sector.
And is it something that is occurring a lot within institutions? I mean, I suspect that some institutions might have it occur and don't even say anything about it, because of the reputational risk.
I think that we have been very open about it,
Okay.
that it is happening. It is happening across all our institutions. And it will peak and valley amongst the various institutions. But we have been tackling it head on, and as such, I think to a certain degree, we are addressing it.
What's the most common type of fraud we're seeing?
The most common type has been where the cards are skimmed either at the ATM or at the point of sale. And what that essentially is that the fraudsters are attaching skimming devices on our ATM vestibules. Years ago, it used to be on the door. You will now notice that our ATMs no longer have a swipe to access to access the
that's why
ATM.
that's one
of the reasons why it was taken off. And then they had gone now to the card reader, and then we had put that see that green overlay that was on the devices, and then they created something that mimics that hardware that also would be skimming cards. And then they moved from that and now have what we are now seeing is a deep insert skimmer. But we had seen that in the Caribbean, and fortunately for us, because we are a part of the JBA, we have member institutions who have relations and entities.
So you were more
within.
proactive.
So we were more proactive.
What do you mean? Explain how the deep insert works.
Okay, so the deep insert skimmer is actually a piece of technology that they have manufactured that goes deep within the card reader. And it is hard to detect by the naked eye.
You have to dismantle the reader to get in
No,
there?
you don't have to dismantle it. They actually have a metal device that they use that can actually attach the skimmer to it and push it into the throat of the card reader. But we had heard about this from in the Caribbean, and we were proactive enough in that we had identified a hardware solution that would assist us in preventing this from happening. And so what we have seen in recent times is a reduction in that type of skimming, and the fraudsters are now going back to the age-old way of using the small handheld skimming devices, and that tends to occur at the point of sale.
So the handheld, what's the handheld?
So the handheld skimming device is a small device that can be held in your hand. It can be hidden in your pocket.
Right.
So you're at a merchant, they have an apron, they have a pocket. I've actually seen a video where a retailer, somebody is cashing, a teller is cashing something at a convenience store, and they swipe the credit card or the debit card at the point of sale, and the computer or the cash register is in front of them, and the customer is unable to see that, and he just has a small device in his hand and is able to just quickly do that. And swipe the card normally for
And
the
it
client,
reads all the information.
and then also swipe the card in the skimming device, and it takes the information off.
That's for credit cards.
That's credit and debit cards.
But how do they get the PIN for the
And how they
debit
get the
card?
PIN, sometimes in the ATM, for example, they will install what is called a pinhole camera. Unfortunately, at the point of sale, we are not as careful as we would want you to be. And so invariably, shoulder surfing, a co-conspirator could be standing behind you in the line, and they observe you entering the PIN, or the person who is attending to you.
If you didn't cover it.
If you didn't cover it. And so it is very important, and we are encouraging our customers that when they're entering the PIN to always cover it. Even in the ATM vestibule, I know that sometimes you will see that it has a little guard on the sides of the keypad, but we're encouraging you to still cover.
Because they might have the cameras.
Because the pinhole camera, and it's hard to detect. Right.
Wow, this is interesting. So I know quite a few people who've been affected by this type of scam, who've had tens of thousands of dollars just drained from their account. How much is this costing the banks?
It is costing us millions in that invariably, once we have done our investigations and we've satisfied ourselves that the victim is in fact a victim, because we have had situations where they are not in fact victims, but co-conspirators, we repay the customers.
So they submit false claims.
So they submit false claims, and we have heard of incidents where persons will come and say, my card has been compromised. They submit a false claim, and we recognize that, one, they were not as careful as they should have been. There's actually a case where we had gone back through the surveillance of when the card had been used, and what we realized, it was a relative of the individual who had been using his card.
Well, that's a complaint that I hear people say, that it takes a long time sometimes for them, if they've been scammed, to recover their money from the banks. But what would cause this, and is that a fair complaint?
The reality is, an investigation will take time, and we have to separate the sheep from the wolves, as well as if an ATM machine has been compromised, or if a point of sale has been compromised, the ripple effect of that, it is not just one customer that has been affected. And as such, whilst we're investigating what has happened to you, the client that has made a complaint, we have to recognize that there are now these 5, 10 other cards and clients that have also been compromised. And as such, we have to go through that process as well, of identifying who these persons are, getting them to come in and doing the investigation around the entire process, and establishing where the weak points were and how we can stem that.
So on average, how long does it take for that investigation to be complete? And the customer ultimately to get their money back?
It's going to vary, so it can be days and it can be weeks, and I think on a rare occasion it may extend beyond a month or so.
So when you do make the decision, when you do complete your investigation and you realize this was indeed fraud, the customer is not liable, you're going to repay the customer, does the bank take a loss on that? Because the money has already been spent, the criminal has already done his or her frolicking.
The bank in a lot of the instances does take a loss, and we are continuing to incur additional costs because we recognize, when we recognize the vulnerabilities, for example, when I pointed out that they had seen the deep insert skimmer coming to our shores.
You have to upgrade.
We have to upgrade, and the cost for the hardware and the software and the public awareness and all that it entails. We now have, majority of financial institutions have in our employ fraud investigators who basically every day, this is what they do. They focus on how they can prevent, how they can detect, how they can mitigate, how they can reduce the fraud from occurring.
So you accept that liability. Do you have insurance for this kind of thing though?
We have to. We have to have insurance, and I guess depending on the value of the claim, etc., we will seek redress through that avenue.
So the financial institutions are as much in the business of fraud management and risk management as lending money.
We have to be. We have to be, and I think that we have to take it so seriously, because what happens to us in the financial institutions has the ripple effect on our economy, etc.
But what about the matter of online banking? Is that being affected? Because, I mean, you hear about the Internet of Things now, you know, there are so many people with access everywhere. Everything is open. Is that a vulnerable spot?
It is. I would say the two top vulnerable spots that we have would be internet banking fraud and card fraud. And so with internet banking fraud, once again, we're going back to our customers and we're encouraging them to be a little bit more security aware. We have to embrace the responsibility of knowing what are the potential exposures out there and how it is, as one of the key stakeholders in this fight against fraud, how it is that we can protect ourselves, protect our families, protect our banks, and protect the organizations that we represent.
So are Jamaicans perpetrating the internet fraud though? Because I've heard about the skimming and the scamming and the insert and whatnot on the machines, but I haven't heard much complaints from Jamaicans and about Jamaicans perpetrating internet fraud, capturing your data online.
Actually, they are. And what we have had situations, for example, with online banking, a lot of financial institutions now offer third-party transfers.
Right,
and one of the things that was happening was that persons' email and their computers were being compromised. And as such, in a simple form, for example, somebody's email address has been compromised and their computer has been compromised. They now know who their account officer is because there's correspondence, for example, on the computer that they have taken over. And they send a communication from that email address instructing the financial institution to transfer funds to account X. And or they make slight variations. They use a phony email address that, you know, if you're not exercising due diligence, you may not necessarily recognize that there's a slight variation in the email. We have had situations where persons through social media have been encouraging persons to work from home. All you need to do is collect some cash in your account and send it off to this account and keep your pay. And then
they get your account information.
And they,
you know what happened to me? I received an email purporting to come from PayPal, and it says PayPal administrator. I mean, I don't answer those things, you know. One of the things I do is check the actual email detail. And when you check the email detail behind the thing that's there,
it's not an authentic
and guess who the vendor was? The vendor was someone named Jack Hugh something. So I mean, that was like a red flag to me. A Jack and a Hugh.
I got an ingenious one too that came from Apple. And I used to have an iPhone, and I got a message that somebody had used my Apple ID to purchase a bunch of stuff, music and apps and different things, coming up to like £200. And I said, well, I don't have this ID anymore, let me check it out. And when I clicked on it, I realized, but this page is just one page. It has no other Apple pages. It's obviously fake.
Yeah, and I had a friend who sent me an email one day and said, I got this email, and it's purportedly from one of our local financial institutions.
Sorry, not to cut you, but they said, in order to dispute these charges, click here so you can get your money back. Yeah. but you have to put in your account information. Yes. Red flag.
It is a red flag. When you see there's a sense of urgency, there's a sense of aggression, when you see there's a request to click here, verify this, validate this, update this information, financial institutions are not going to ask you for your account and personal information to be updated by that medium.
Exactly.
If you get a request like that, we encourage you to call the financial institution directly, not with the number that is in the phone, in the correspondence that you've received, not by clicking on the URL or the link that they have provided, but going directly to the website that you know.
What was the experience you were about to tell?
So the experience my friend had was that he got an email, and it was purportedly from a local financial institution. It looks like it's from the local financial institution, and basically it was saying, we needed to update your customer information is outdated, we needed to update it, etc. What was a red flag for him is that he did not have an account with that financial institution. And what we realized was that the fraudster was just widely sending emails out there. And say he sent out 10, rest assured at least 5 persons are going to take the bait.
Right.
And so we're encouraging customers to just be a little bit more aware. Like I said, be wary of emails containing links, etc., asking for personal information. Hover over the link. Sometimes you will see that the URL is not in fact www.bank.com, but in fact www.bank something else or BNK. You know, just a slight variation. So just be wary of those kinds of things.
But do you have any statistics on the number of persons that are affected by this every month, or the percentage?
Statistics are hard to come by. We have asked
But each bank knows exactly how much money they're losing. Why would it be so hard to come by?
They do, but like I said, we are just still in the process of collating that information, and the Bank of Jamaica is also will be requesting that information from the financial institutions as well. So there will be a repository for that information, but it is something that is taking time.
What is your experience with the capacity of the police to actually deal with these situations?
Well, as you speak about statistics, there was actually an article this year where a representative from the JCF did speak to cybercrimes, costing us over $100 million. So
per what?
I think he was referring to 2016.
2016.
So, and there was an overseas news report that spoke about card fraud and saying that was a $16 billion business.
And that is just what is
US dollars.
just what is reported.
And that is just what is reported, because unfortunately, because our customers are not monitoring their accounts, they're not detecting that their accounts have been compromised either. And so they're not reporting it. And so it goes back once again to what it is as customers that we can do to protect ourselves.
So what do you do as soon as you realize something's not right with my account? You call your bank immediately?
Call your bank immediately and report it. Tell them that I've looked at my account, because we are encouraging our customers. You have your check stubs, you have your debit and credit card slips. Frequently check your bank account and look, you have detected that there's an unusual activity on your account, call the financial institution, report it to them, come in, file a formal complaint, present the evidence that you may have. For example, I have a friend who, over one weekend, about 3 or 4 $75,000 transactions, was charged to some retail store in rural Jamaica. And the person lives in Kingston. The transaction occurred in Savlamar or wherever it was over the weekend. Immediately they called the financial institution, they reported it. And, you know, we were able to ascertain that, well, I suspect that that merchant was in collusion with the fraudsters.
In the minute or so we have left, is there any final thing that you want to say to the public that the JBA is doing to deal with this situation?
For example, education. And
okay, so one of the things that we take as a priority is public awareness and education, and we do it through seminars that we may have. We recently had a seminar on, the Anti-Fraud Committee has a seminar every year, and we look at current and emerging trends in fraud. We use that as an opportunity to engage our anti-fraud practitioners, whether it be in the JCF, whether it be in the private sector or the banking sector. We also use opportunities through JIFS, which is the training arm of the Jamaica Bankers Association, to conduct other seminars. We had a document fraud seminar where we had PICA and the guys TAJ coming in and speaking about fraudulent documentation. We have an annual, JBA has an annual AML conference that we have later on in the year. And for example, last year we had talked about lottery scamming, and we had talked about occupational fraud. And so we are trying. We have had presentations to different civic groups. I have gone to the University of the West Indies and spoken to the Banking League, which are just students who are going to come into the banking industry, and just really apprising them of this is what we're exposed to, and this is, what it is as the various stakeholders in the country. What is it we can do?
But the safest thing is for customers to be aware, right?
The safest thing is for customers to be aware.
And you can assure them that the bank is still the safest place
the bank
to keep your money.
is and will always be the safest place, the safest place to keep your money. We are so regulated and mandated by BOJ to do our stress testing and our penetration testing, and to have the necessary controls and safeguards in place to really protect our customers.
I mean, if somebody steals it from under your mattress, Dennis, you're not getting it back.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
These at the bank, if you can prove it was fraud.
You can still get it back from the bank.
Right.
It might take a little while, but
I'm just asking customers to be patient with us,
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us,
Okay, thank you.
Stacey, and all the best. When we come back, are Jamaican manufacturers ignoring product research and development? We'll hear more from Professor Errol Morrison. Stay with us. Welcome back to On Point. Well, Jamaica is known for several unique and indigenous products, from music to food, sports, of course, ganja and more. It's brand Jamaica, as they like to say. Here's a look at what makes the island's products uniquely marketable.
Brand Jamaica is famous worldwide, which makes authentic Jamaican products sought-after commodities across the globe. However, local manufacturers have not been able to fully tap into this because of what they say are resource constraints. The complaint has always been that enough money is not being put into research and development, which means Jamaican products aren't able to keep pace with those from other countries. However, on the other hand, the Scientific Research Council (SRC), which has a mandate to facilitate research and development for small businesses, has oftentimes said that these businesses do not effectively utilize the resources available to them.
So why hasn't the country been able to maximize earnings from these unique advantages? Professor Errol Morrison is Director General of the National Commission on Science and Technology. He says it's because companies haven't been doing enough research and development. Welcome to On Point.
Yes, thank you.
So what is the deal then on the research and development?
Well, let me put the context in. So much so that for the last several decades, they've been studying just how countries, by putting investment in their research and development, improve their outcome in terms of their GDP. Now, the last data that we can find, that was in 2006, the UNESCO statistics pointed that the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, those rich countries, the combined budget, both government and private sector, is about 30% of that total budget, that is put into R&D.
30%.
30%.
And
and the outcome that they get from that in terms of selling their marketable goods contributes 50% of their GDP.
So they're getting a great return.
Absolutely. Contrast that now with CARICOM in general. And the CARICOM countries together are putting in 0.13% of the budget. That's the data they collected. And out of that outcome in terms of the GDP is less than 1%. Little in, little out. So we are lamenting the fact that if we are going to get on a trajectory for growth, it is well known, it's R&D that's driving growth. Right across the world, history repeats itself. And we in the Caribbean are just not doing that. Hence, the question is, why can't we encourage more of this?
But why are we not doing it though? Because I mean the data you say shows it. I mean, and it makes sense logically.
You're in the private sector.
Perhaps you should answer that question then.
But you know, what I'm saying is this. The resources in the Caribbean are limited.
Yeah.
And when you look at what is available in terms of what we would invest our research capabilities in, and especially if you're going to be encouraging foreign investors to come in and help us with that research, because that's an important factor. We lack personnel, we lack equipment, resource, and so on. But I often ask the question, what is going to encourage an individual to bypass the sophisticated research capabilities in a London, in a New York, etc., and come to the Caribbean? And the answer that is evident and obvious, to me at least, is that we are going to have something that they will want to come here to invest in and research.
But Professor, one of the challenges I find is that, and I don't know how it compares in other countries, certainly they have it, but we don't give any incentives from a fiscal point of view for that sort of thing.
Well, this is what we have been, trying to reduce now. The resuscitated National Commission on Science and Technology. We are trying to say, look, for every project that comes into this country, why can't we target even a 0.001% of that total project to support research into that project-related activity? So in other words, you're looking at a recurrent problem solving and delving into aspects that can probably improve that project outcome.
Yeah, but
so we're asking for that.
I wonder though, isn't the incentive the direct correlation to profit?
No, because what happens is that when a company goes into research and development, there's always a period that they're going to take to actually develop the product when there's not going to be any revenues. And as soon as a company starts in Jamaica, and a small company might start, and they want to go and develop something, the first thing you hit them with is a minimum business tax. So they don't even have a chance to start making revenues before the government policy taxes them.
But look at where the rub comes now. A Trevor Hamilton and Associates study in 2006 showed that all of those consultancies or problem-solving projects, whether government or private sector, combined, we the local institutions that have that kind of capacity, UWI, UTech, NCU combined, get only about 2% of that opportunity. 98% goes abroad. So now we're saying, what benefit it is to the country when you put that kind of output out there, and we locally are not getting an opportunity to assist in that. Mind you, when the foreign companies come, they pick our brains.
Not only that, they get a lot of incentives from the government that the local companies don't get. I mean, I'll give you an example, Prof. What has happened with Dr. Henry Lowe? How much incentive was provided from a fiscal point of view to support that? He did it on his own.
Yes.
And and that is a challenge.
And not just incentive, but access to the capital to do the research.
Yeah. Well, again, it was friends and support from abroad that really brought me. Because again, this matter of cancer research isn't sexy in the local context. And you find that, I happen to know that he, pounded the pavement to the fiscal houses and potential investors. And they all, as he quite often says, look, if I wanted to buy a car, I would have gotten the money before I even sat down.
Yeah.
But I've been making presentations, in various houses and so on, and they're not taking it up. I guess this whole matter of research on a product which may take 10 years down the road to come, which it has taken them 10 to 15 years to even get here, that kind of long-term investment is not in the cultural psyche.
And he must be fully commended for what he has done. It is fantastic. But I'm saying that one of the roles of government is to encourage that sort of thing. And in the US, for example, there's various incentives for that sort of things, R&D, and from tax breaks or whatever, and also even into getting into solar. They have holiday periods for people who want to get into this sort of thing. Our policy is more concerned about the fiscal revenue for next year than anything else.
Very short-sighted, because in the long haul, you passed upon the 10 to 15-year window in which Dr. Lowe is doing his research, and now you don't have the opportunity to share in the revenues, hundreds of millions of dollars that the product is bound to make.
Of course, this is an area we neglect at our peril, because his product is just one of many that could possibly come to the fore. But unless our investors see that, look, here is where we need to put the dollar of investment, because outcome, you're talking, billions at a conservative. Any of the local products you mentioned, whether it's the marijuana or the ginger or the turmeric or even our own limestone, a number of things that have this kind of potential. We're not exploiting it, and as such, the potential income is being lost. And unless you really create something new, that you can set your price and sell to the market, you're not getting anywhere. You're just simply buying and selling.
You have to innovate.
Yes. Speaking of innovation, that's the very point I was going to come to, is part of the reason that our economies in the Caribbean, CARICOM in particular, we're just not focused on or not based on innovation. We're based on immediate need. If you look, if you're familiar with the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, the GEM report, which comes out, I think it's every year, you look at those economies that are innovation based. We're not there.
No.
We're not innovation based. We have a culture of we start up a business because we need our money right now.
Service industry. That's what we're into mostly. But unless you're getting into the creativity, aspect of things, making new products, I don't think you really.
And how much potential is actually out there, Prof? Because, we hear about Brand Jamaica all the while, but we never seem to be able to exploit Brand Jamaica.
I was developing the point where I said what it is that would attract the big investors to come here. Because for too long we have been participating in research and development by partnering with industries abroad or research groups abroad. And we're studying their problem. Now, what is going to bring them here to look at our problems? And I think the obvious answer is our strengths. And as you mentioned in the opener, right, our strengths function around our sport, our music, our cuisine, and largely neglected, our nutraceuticals.
Which we still have not been able to exploit any of those areas.
And why is it firstly music, sport, and cuisine is well known out there, although still underexploited? But let us come to the nutraceuticals, which is brand new, to a sense, although we have been in it from the 70s in a big way.
Our grandparents from the country know about it a long time.
This is where you call the cultural science. What we have known for years, practiced for years, but now we're trying to study to improve the actual product.
And commercialize it.
And commercialize it. Now, what is happening is when you look at going back into the nutraceuticals, which are extracted from, say, our plant base, we say it over and over, of all the plants that have been, described by the World Health Organization as satisfactory, demonstrating some kind of health benefit, 50% of them are to be found here, But nobody's looking. If you look even in the 70s when Manley West developed his glaucoma and his asthma product from marijuana, you'd have thought the fellows would have gone into the thing. But no.
Well, I'll give you another one, Prof. I was told that the Jamaica Hope, the cow that was developed by TP,
yes.
I hear that the best Jamaica Hope you can find was in Australia because we've diluted it so much.
Well, look at it the other way. Going back to the plant, the ramgoat roses? The good old ramgoat roses you see growing wild all around the place. Again, in the 70s, it was discovered that whilst they were testing it for diabetes, some Canadian visitors took it back to Canada and they studied it and found that it has anti-cancer properties. Now, not only did they stay at the nutraceutical, which is the broad-based extract, they purified it, and it is now an important drug in the treatment of some cancers. Vincristine and vinblastine are the final products. Now, you know where that plant is being grown in thousands of hectares in order to provide the raw material? Madagascar. And Jamaica got not one penny out of that development. And it was first discovered here that there was something about this plant that had some potential benefit. Now, we're not going to allow this to happen again. And hence you find like a hen below, trying to push the product all to the point as pure as he can get it. And there are others coming, You've heard of the and this is a marijuana extract that he has there now that is being used in myeloid leukemia. He has yet another one coming from the old man's beard, the bald moss. And there are a few others which I'm sworn to secrecy at this time. But in a couple of months, you should be hearing big time, because not Jamaicans, but some North Americans are investing heavily.
But then how does our fiscal policy incentivize that? Because that's the thing in our Prof. We need to incentivize this sort of innovation if we're forward thinking as government.
Well, that is where our current Minister of Science is now taking us. You know, he himself is a research scientist. And interestingly enough, he did his research in the nutraceuticals. So he understands the potential role there. And he has been rolling out some new incentives. And he just put 30 million in the market. You know, well, you know, I shouldn't say in the market, put 30 million up for research proposals that can relate to what we call these indigenous knowledge systems. And what is interesting is whilst he's doing that, he's now collaborating with South Africa, who are interested in our, nutraceuticals here. And they have matched that with another 30 million. So we have a total of 60 million.
Jamaican dollars?
No, man, US.
Real money.
Just checking.
which is going to be directed now at studying what they call the indigenous knowledge system, what are various potential nutraceuticals, as well as they want to look at other areas such as water products.
And you said the minister has taken that initiative.
Yes.
That's Minister Wheatley, right?
Wheatley, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So tell me more about what you're doing at the National Commission on Science and Technology, which you lead. You said it was recently reconstituted?
Sort of reactivated when I went there. And
that was how long ago?
It's about 2-3 years now. Right? And what has happened there is we're trying to formulate an overall science and technology policy, because we think that we need that in the framework, which will again incorporate some of the incentives that you're speaking to, and see if we can encourage not only the private sector but various government aspects that need certain responses and studies to problems that their different directions may take. We want to be able to provide that answer. So we're putting everything within the context of science and technology policy. Then one of the things that we need to be looking at, if we're going to be on the world stage, we have to be able to be showing how we compare. That data that I quoted you from UNESCO in 2004, whilst it is speaking to a very disparaging comparison compared to the world stage, that sort of data is very suspect that they use, because we have not been collecting the data properly. The Caribbean in general, there are only about 2 or 3 countries like JA, Trinidad, and maybe Barbados that have been properly collecting data that can tell you what we have been putting into science and technology, research and development. So we are now getting seriously involved in the world setting to be able to collect that data and to be able to show how we compare with the rest of the world. Because the average developed country now, USA, Canada, Singapore, Malaysia, they're all spending about 3% of their, of their GDP in further development of science, technology, and innovation. And we are way down in the, less than 1%. And we feel that we should be able to compare with that. So that's the next thing that we're doing. And we're pushing now, very importantly, you see, you hit, for example, the marijuana story. But people are forgetting that the marijuana story is part of the nutraceuticals. And we are now pushing...
Which is another thing we're taking too long with.
Well, that's another. But we are trying to create a proper nutraceutical industry. They've been talking about it for the last decade and more. But it needs proper monitoring and regulation. And what is happening is we are now writing out aspects that would amend the Food and Drug Act, because nutraceuticals are neither a food nor a drug. They are somewhere in the middle. And the Act is silent on that. So you find a lot of local products that are coming out. All these things you see being sold on the treats and so on, this bedroom tonic, this kind of thing. Yeah. All these are aspects of nutraceuticals. Although we've been talking about some of the more well-known international ones, we have a lot of local
those have been bought in formula for a long time.
Well, what we're saying, we want to protect the public because there's a potential. Because we don't know their manufacturing nor their agricultural practices in preparing the raw materials. And all this needs to be protected. So we are developing a cabinet submission as we speak, working with the Ministry of Health to take that forward and so put some sort of control and regulation on that industry.
Well, let us know when that submission is made. We're interested in hearing more about it.
We're very close.
Yes. Thanks for joining us, Prof.
Thank you.
Professor Errol Morrison. He's Director General of the National Commission on Science and Technology. When we come back, we'll have the numbers and your word on the street. Welcome back. Well, earlier in the show, we spoke about the impact of bank fraud, ATM fraud, credit card fraud, etc. in Jamaica. It's an issue that's been plaguing people around the world for years. Here are the numbers.
Reliable data on losses from card scams in Jamaica has been hard to come by. Jamaican banks have reported varying numbers over the past few years. In 2008, Jamaican banks reported losses of over $3 billion. The following year, the banks reported losses of $665 million in the first half of the year alone. In 2010, Scotiabank told shareholders it had lost $150 million to fraud in the first 9 months of the year. Then in April this year, NCB reported that it had to refund some $10 million to customers who'd been scammed. While Jamaica National, just a couple of months old, reported losses of $1 million. Worldwide, credit card fraud was reported as a $7 billion problem in 2009. According to a Nielsen report, this is only expected to worsen, reaching a staggering $32 billion by 2020.
And our On Point team hit the streets and asked Jamaicans, do you think that your money is safe in the bank?
Well, yes, I do think so, because a lot of time persons put money at their home, and things like fire or even basically natural disasters do happen.
No, your money can't save in the bank, because each time you pay to save your money, you pay for draw your money. Dormant account, them still take it from you when you not draw from it.
Yes, in terms of how long it stays, a few banks at the end of the month charge interest, but as long as you have a certain amount, it should be safe. You'll come back and see it after a few months. At the end of the year, well, that I can't swear for.
I think we reach a point, Dennis, where everybody either knows somebody who's had this happen to them, or they've had it happen to them personally.
In terms of the fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Somebody close to them, too.
Yeah, it's frightening, especially since we're moving towards a society that uses more and more cashless transactions. So it is inconvenient to have cash.
Yeah.
You're also moving more towards a more open internet, called the Internet of Things, because everything is out there. So this matter of cybersecurity and credit card fraud is very important. It's going to affect our livelihood going forward.
Yeah, and we tend to feel like, well, at least me, for example, I don't like carrying cash, especially for a fairly large transaction, because I feel like it's unsafe. I feel like people are following me, watching me.
And it's inconvenient.
And it's inconvenient, especially with our currency notes. We have $31,000 bills. I know you have the 5,000 now, but they're not as common. And you tend to feel like it might be safer to do the transaction via electronically.
Yeah.
But we've seen these instances now where you're targeted that way too, and I'm glad that the JPA was on to at least clarify, what they're doing, and that you can get your money back within a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah. What it shows is that they're really spending a lot of money on it, but also very important,
because they're losing,
is that users, the customers, need to be careful about their information.
Yes.
You know, and I don't think that enough people are careful about their information, because most persons who would have fallen victim to this are just not practicing proper due diligence.
A lot of people are sloppy
Yeah.
with entering their
Yeah.
pins, just simply not covering the keypad.
Yeah.
It's something that I myself just recently started making sure I do it every single time, no
Yeah.
matter if it seems like they could be watching or not, every single time. And,
And-
monitoring your online
Yeah, and
transactions.
not protecting their online information by just clicking on any email that comes in, any
Yeah.
link, you know, and entering your information. So the other segment, though,
I
was
think that
really very interesting.
It was eye-opening with
Yeah.
Professor Morrison.
Yeah.
Speaking about the importance of research and development. Little in, little out.
Yeah, yeah.
Less than 1% being invested in research and development.
Yeah, and it's something we recognize at the PSOG. You know, we formed an innovation committee with the University of West Indies, but certainly there's not enough being done in terms of research and development. Companies do it individually, it's many of the larger companies, but the problem is that we need to give the smaller companies the incentive to do it, because they don't have the funds up front. So when you start taxing them as soon as they come out of the block with a minimum business tax, it's not encouraging people to go in this thing for the long haul, because from day one you have to borrow money to start paying taxes.
Mm-hmm. I feel like one of the problems too is that some businesses that offer products that are already popular might say, we already have a winning product. Why invest in research? Why do we need to change anything? It doesn't make sense. We're already doing good enough, and good enough for them is good enough.
Well, companies will do that. They will invest when they see an environment that they can predict and look towards a long-term prosperity. Just like Amazon. Amazon invested knowing that for the first 5 years they were going to lose money because they have a stable economic environment that they can work on going forward.
All right, well, that's our show for today. I want to thank you for joining us yet another week. Thanks to our hardworking production team. For you, our viewers, of course, big up to our sponsors. I'm Kalilo Reynolds.
And I'm Dennis Chung. Until next week.
On Point was brought to you by National Baking Company.